everyone. Today we have with us Kalyan, and Kalyan is here to give us a teacher's perspective on what it's like for students who don't have access to technology right now or who are struggling with that. Kalyan is a Teach for India fellow who is based in Hyderabad. And Kalyan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself now.
Yes, yeah, like she said, my name is Kalyan. I am presently teaching in ninth and 10th grades in a government high school in Hyderabad. Yeah, I'm teaching maths and physics for both of these grades, something that I'm really passionate about.
Nice. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Kalyan. Okay, you've told us a little bit about the school you teach in and the grades, but could you also tell us a little bit about the occupations of the parents, the students in your school?
Yes. So I think, I mean, if I'm looking at it with a data perspective, then I'd say about 60% of my children are single parent children, single parent households. So most of the mothers are working. They either work in tailoring shops, small tailoring shops that they've either put for themselves, or they end up working in the garment shops owned by some of the bigger guys or bigger people in the community. And apart from that, most of them are also maids. Yeah, and they work as office mates, like the startups around the area. So they'd hire people to manage their office and keep it clean. So some of them also end up working there.
Okay.
Yes, and other 40% of the children who have both their parents, I think, yeah, most of the fathers end up doing some construction work or end up doing work that involves physical labor, either working for someone's household or cooking or things like, or work in alcohol shops, selling things, work in phone shops, computer shops, or all those small shops that you see beside each other. Some of them sell fruits and vegetables, and some of them also sell the chakna that you have outside the alcohol shops. Yeah,
Okay.
that's about it.
And what is the strength of the student, like in the classrooms?
So the ninth graders, they're around 48 children in ninth class, and in 10th class, we have 45 children.
Okay.
So overall, I think 93, yes.
So if you could throw a little bit of light on in a non-pandemic situation, like how is it teaching in a classroom, and then we'll come to like a virtual classroom.
Right. So ideally, in a non-pandemic situation, I mean, like maybe through the interview, you can see that I'm a very loud person. So I really enjoyed the aspect of teaching in a classroom because my voice used to reach from one end of the class till the other end of the class, and the students used to be really excited about it. They used to get excited about how the voice is high, about how the energy is high, and so it's something that translates through the air, right? In a physical space, it's something that translates through the air, the energy, the atmosphere. So it was amazing to teach there because everything was so energetic, and also it was so easy for me to look at the children, read them, understand who's understanding. So easy to pinpoint each and every child and see, okay, did he get what I just said? Did they get what I just said? And yeah, it was amazing. I can walk through the classroom. I can go write things on children's notebooks if I really liked how they responded to a question, maybe without making a sound. But the physical interaction, that was the best part of it. I mean, looking, even a smile sort of feels like it translates to the classroom, but on a virtual space, I don't know how that happens. But yeah, there is a sense of feeling, like you can definitely see, you don't just have to see a child to understand whether they understood a concept or not, but sometimes it's just to the corner of your head or just the space, just the response of the classroom, that you understand how you're teaching. So yeah, in a non-pandemic phase, in a physical classroom, it was actually pretty amazing to teach the classroom because I could one-on-one interact with children physically.
Yeah, that's true. And moving to like when the lockdown just started, like what was that transition like?
Oh, that I think was the transition. I think was one of the toughest transitions I've faced in my life till date. One, I think, because the number of students who turned up to the classroom itself was drastically cut off. Like, if our strength in those physical spaces was at around 40, out of 45, we at least used to have around 35 to 40 children in the classroom every day regularly, right? But the moment this virtual classes started, we've had like around 12. We started with 12 students online. So from 35 to 12, there are advantages. There's definitely more individual focus we can give to each child. But definitely there is a huge cutoff in the amount of energy in the room, in the amount of people you're reaching, and hence sometimes also in your mental space, because you know you're not able to reach to every child in that classroom, but rather able to reach to a very small section of that classroom, which is sort of again increasing the gap in that classroom itself.
Yeah.
Let alone the education space. So that sort of made the transition really hard. But I've had some of you help me out, right, with devices and all. So once let's say the attendance started increasing, and also we started accepting the fact that that's how it is. I think we started having our fun with online spaces as well. We started using a lot of technology into it. The children were very surprised and interested suddenly into the classes because of all these technologies that are coming up, all the new skills that they're gaining, all the new things that they're able to do. I mean, the very teachers who banned using mobile phones in the school are now encouraging them to use them, right? So I think they were really, really enthusiastic about that fact. So yeah, the transition was hard, but now I think we're sort of really picking up some skills and really loving the process of online teaching as well. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Do you think the students will miss the online classes once, optimistically, like once things go back to normal?
I think that's a beautiful question, Ishmita. I think some of these students who were really, really falling back in the physical spaces actually managed to pull through amazingly well in these online spaces. So I think, like you asked, these students would definitely miss the online space, is what I feel like, because it's one of the spaces where they've also come to realize that they have those skill sets and the ability to shine and show their skills in a classroom, right? So I think they will miss the space a little because it definitely gave them the chance to do that.
That's a very interesting insight that you've given, actually, because honestly, like I wasn't expecting to hear that. What do you think actually brought about this like increase in performance because of a change of, say, like from physical to virtual setup?
Right. Right. That's again a very interesting question. So I think there are quite a few reasons. Like if I think about a few introverted kids in the classroom who definitely didn't want to come out and talk loudly and answer your question. Now it's a simple Zoom chat, right? So they don't have to hear anything. They're not intimidated by anything. All of our classes don't have videos on because if the videos are on, the battery drains out faster and we won't be able to continue the class long, right? So the videos are off. Hence, there are no eyes looking at children, right? So I think they feel like there is no judgment anymore.
Okay.
So I can see that they definitely come out of mute much more bravely, make those mistakes that they want to make, and they're not. They know for a fact that they're not going to be judged. But in the physical space problem, I think when children are looking at them or when people are looking at them, it sort of intimidates these children a little. These are introverts that I'm talking about. But even if you look at people who are extroverts, like some of them in the physical spaces who didn't progress very well. Mostly, I think it happened because they felt like there was too much of a gap, and for them to catch up, I don't think they felt the motivation to do that. But I think once the online scene started, and we also started doing things from scratch, where we said, okay, we also need to learn, so we'll teach you from scratch again. Let's see how we are also getting used to it. I think that's when their hopes build up, saying, okay, now there is a chance for me to catch up with whatever I've missed out on, and I might not get this again. So some of them I saw just shot out with investment. The moment we started online classes and we told them that, okay, we're going to do things from the starting again, I just saw that their engagement itself with the teachers increased. Like they texted every day. They asked, okay, when is the class starting? When do I join? How long will this go for? So I think these two reasons were some of the major factors that played a role. I'm not sure that I'm sure there must be quite a few more, but I'm missing out on them as well.
That's so interesting. And I really love the fact that you brought out this point, because there is a lot of skepticism around the whole idea of digital learning, right? Like, and many people are like, how effective is it really? But
Right.
one thing that I've observed a little, like from a little bit of a distance, is the amount that students want to do with, like, just giving them an opportunity to get like access to one device, and how
Right.
much they're doing through it. So like if you could, throw a little bit of light on that, what are the other ways that you're seeing that, students, what are the new skills, as you mentioned, that students are picking up through this whole thing?
Right. So since I love math, I'll just start off with an example with math. So there are graphs that you use to explain some equations, right? In a physical space, most of the times it's just a sheet of paper that you're trying to plot a graph on. But now that we're in an online space, there are almost 1,000 apps out there which will help you plot a graph the way you want and look at it, study the graph, understand the graph, get a feel for what that curve means. And that's so much more than just looking at a paper and a graph and a line on it. There is this thing called Desmos. Okay, it's a online platform where you can sort of draw lines and graphs and draw multiple curves and see how they're behaving, study the curve and all. So I've seen my students get hooked to it. The moment I started involving it in the classroom, they were just hooked, because they didn't have to go through the entire process of plotting it, but all they had to do was just type in the equation and they get it. And some children who just love studying or analyzing things, for them it's the right tool, because it's there and now I just have to analyze. I don't have to go through all the plotting and all that trouble. Maybe I'll learn it later. So they love it. They got hooked to it. And like Desmos, I think there were a multitude of different things which we introduced in the classroom. And I don't see that happening on a physical space. I actually would have never seen that happening in a physical space. Maybe now it will, because I've already been exposed to it. So maybe now I might try it in a physical space. But yeah, like you said, these children who are getting a chance to use their phones are now understanding a completely new way to use it, are now seeing that a phone is maybe not just for a few set of things that we thought it was for, but there is an entire world out there, and that world being the internet, and being something that they've never explored as much. They're awestruck by it. So right now they're in a phase where they're being bombarded with the information from the internet, and now they have to sit and sort, okay, I love this, I don't love this, so I'll pursue this, I don't pursue this. And they see that their number of chances of interacting with the world itself has gone up. Their number of chances to access some information itself has gone up. So that way, I think getting that phone is sort of giving them a whole new level of awareness itself. I mean, I'm not sure if I answered the question,
No, you did.
but
You
I
did.
think I did go.
Yeah. Okay, moving to the students who missed out for some time because they didn't get access and now they have access. Like, this is something that I was thinking of because, back in school, like if we missed out 1 or 2 days also, like minimum, like when we fall sick and stuff, and then come back, you feel so lost. And then here, there are
Yeah.
students who miss out on months of classes, and then there are these internet issues and like just a million other issues, right? What's it like for
Right.
them, especially when they come back? I mean, I know it's very subjective, but how long does it take to get them back, focus and things?
Yeah, that's a good question. How long? Like you said, it is subjective. But let's say, I mean, there are a few ways in which we definitely account for them, and I think the key answer would be that word called differentiated classrooms, right? So if there are children who are missing out and they want to catch up and they're a level behind, or they have some gap with the other students, we definitely differentiate the classroom in a way where, and differentiating on an online platform is so much more easier because there is no physical space involved. You can make like 50 breakout rooms on Zoom, put one child each in a breakout room also, and they get individual attention. But on a physical space, to get 50 rooms it's improbable, right? So yeah, we create those breakout rooms, we create differentiated classes for a child who missed out and he came back to the class. For them, it's going to look like a completely different objective. For them, they'd have to do something else to catch up. So with these children who are already caught up, they're going to go through a flow, and with the children who've just joined, they're going to go through a different flow that the teacher set for them. So we jump through breakout rooms, we give these children a task, then jump to that child, then give them a task based on the objective that they're following, then jump back here. But there's something new that we're trying on Nishmita. I think even with differentiation, there is only so much that a teacher can do. Like maybe make like 5 breakout rooms and jump through. And more than that, I think it becomes a little inefficient. So we were trying to equip students themselves, equip or make classes which will equip students to pursue a topic in the way that they want to do it. So we were trying to make them really independent. So even if a child misses something and comes back, then maybe there is just a set of steps or a list of steps which the student can follow, read by himself, understand, explore the topic by himself by following these steps, and maybe gain all the knowledge that he's missed out on, or even most probably more than what their friends have gained through this entire process. So we're trying two things. We're trying differentiating, and we're also trying to make students independently learn so they can catch up. How long it takes, if they generally miss out around 1 month of the class, yeah, they take about another month to catch up. But it's a solid catch up. Like they catch up and they know they're at that level.
Yeah.
It's not I don't know if I'm there yet kind of a catch up. They know they're there. So
Okay.
it takes about a month. Yeah.
Nice. And what about assessments? How do you handle those things?
Assessments. Again, there are quite a few apps that allow us to make some amazing assessments. There's Google Forms as well, right? So it's again a whole new way for children to also write assessments, and they're so curious because most of the times it's just multiple choice questions, and they love the process because they just have to click a button and it's done. Rather than write a lot, keep on writing and make sure the handwriting is neat and all that stuff. They don't have to worry about it. So that way they're excited about it. Authenticity of the assessments is again, it's got its challenges. Now they can't copy from their friends, but they can definitely use the internet to do it. So I think, but culture-wise, I think that's a problem that's easily solved. Like the culture of the classroom is good enough, then the children are definitely not going to do that. I mean, if they know that they're writing the assessment for learning and not for marks, I don't see any child copying marks. That's the objective that they've set in the mind for their assessment. So that way it's good. their new stuff. They're trying out new stuff, and we are also trying out new stuff for their assessments. But most of the times it goes back to okay, I'll give you a PDF with questions. Why don't you write each of those answers for the questions and send a photo to me on WhatsApp? Because that way we can pinpoint which step the child went wrong with. And yeah, most of the times it's that way, but sometimes we try to find unique methods to give assessments. There are quite a few websites. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was just asking based on like curiosity, but the fact that you're like running these classes in itself is such a huge deal. Honestly, like at least from my perspective, it must be though like another challenge, right? Like, so I've heard a lot of these students saying, complaining about lack of memory space, and like the reason why I'm asking this question is highlighting the need for a good, like decent phone rather than just any phone. That's something
Very
that
true.
like, because a lot of times when we give the hope to a student that they're going to get a phone, it means that they should be able to study efficiently, right? Could you talk a little bit around that? Like, I mean, I've heard students complaining about things like in maybe like in other classrooms where, there are PowerPoint presentations and the slides are, so filled that they can't catch up with, like the text is too small on a phone
Yeah.
screen, and like they can't catch up with the number of screenshots they have to save and organizing information, things like that. So could you talk a
Right.
little bit about like, the struggles that the students have faced around these issues?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, or like I told about my classroom also, you'll definitely see that all the videos are off.
Mm.
Why? Because we know the battery life is not going to be able to sustain it. And some of the phones also heat up majorly, right? Because Zoom's a heavy app. So they heat up and they just switch off. And that means the student can't switch it on for the next 20 minutes or so until it cools down because they're really afraid it'll blast, and good enough fear also.
Yeah.
So yeah, battery life is one major issue, and the quality of the phone itself. Like if it's not a great quality, I mean, it's definitely going to heat up in the next in 10 15 minutes of Zoom usage, with the camera on, without the camera on, anything. It's just going to heat up. My phone, being a really good quality phone, heats up because I switch on the video and I point it to the board constantly. So that's one major issue: the battery, and like you said, memory. That's a huge problem, because if it's not having a good memory, that means the student is coming to an online space, an online classroom, but does not have the freedom to explore each and everything that the online scenario has to offer to them. Like the teacher wants to involve a lot of apps, the teacher wants to involve gaming, let's say, and they need to install a few games to do that. They need the memory space to be able to install multiple games, multiple apps, multiple folders, and at the same time do all these things together. And if the memory is not going to sustain for it, then it's going to be an experience that the people that the children are going to miss out on, even though they have a phone.
Yeah.
So that memory was becoming a huge problem. Three, like I said, the screen space. I think this has to be dealt with on two sides. One, I think the presentations have to be really, really, really well designed by teachers if they're using presentations. Some of them suspend their phones on camera suspenders and make it point to a whiteboard and write on it. So I've seen that happen as well. And yeah, even there, like you said, that text being small is a huge issue, because the phone screens are small. At max, they're only going to see that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does become a problem. But luckily, at least Zoom gives that zoom in feature. So for them to navigate through, it's going to be a little easy. Yeah, majorly, but I'm majorly thinking that battery was one of the biggest problems we face, because there's constantly children dropping off the classroom because of either the phone getting heated up or the battery life not sustaining. Like even though they keep it for charge for 100%, like if you're taking a 2 hour class, 1 hour for math and then 1 hour for social, the phone barely lasts. Like maybe that usage will last them, make the phone last for them for about an year, but after that, that phone's going to be again maybe not that useful anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were some of the major issues that we faced with the phones. Yes.
I'm just thinking what these things must be doing to the motivation of students in many ways. Like, I know that you told me in the beginning that some of them, like, it has increased their motivation, but in general, like, it must be so annoying, right? Like, I'm just thinking, like, first of all, sitting at home, which is a very small house, there's no
Yep.
privacy whatsoever. There might
Yep.
be a lot of noise going around. And then on top of that, like the battery and the screen size and everything, like, could you tell us a little bit around that?
Yeah. I think you've already mentioned quite a lot because you're right. The space is really small. Your parents, your cousins, your sisters, all of them are sitting in the same room that you're trying to focus in the classroom, and there's sort of a constant sound behind you. So you're trying to give it your all and focus on the class. And like you said, exactly at that time, if that class is somehow cut off, or if something else happens to you and you get dropped off, it's so much of a skill itself, even for us to say, okay, it's fine. I'll just rework it. I mean, to maintain that calm and patience, it's such a huge skill. And most of these children are they're in their teenage, right? I mean, also they lack patience sometimes, and they're trying to show their all. They're trying to give it their all and put in all their hard work in. And when this happens, they just don't feel like coming back sometimes. So they just feel like, okay, I'm going to call it off. I'm going to take it taken off. I'm just going to take my rest. I need my mental space, and they just drop the class there. Maybe go to something that they have fun with, and sometime maybe rejoin again later in the morning, next morning, or things like that. But yeah, the environment itself is it's definitely not very conducive, and I think to really work with that, I think we need to work with the parents, make sure that they're making the environment conducive for their child when they're learning. Because like you said, the space is really small, the parents are there, and they're the only ones who are looking at their children and making sure that everything around them is going fine, because the child can't do both. They can't focus on the class and make sure their environment is fine. Yeah, those are some of the struggles that they're facing. I often tend to miss out on highlighting the environmental or mental struggles that children face, but thank you very much for bringing that up. Even they feel that lack of presence. Some of them do feel the lack of, some of them love coming to school because their friends are there, because they can sit beside them and learn. But they're already facing a deficit of that. They're not getting that physical connection. So they're already struggling and sitting there. They're trying to listen to a voice, or that's about it, right? From my side, it's just a voice and the board. And that's what they're trying to sit and listen to and focus on. So yeah, that way it does get a little difficult, like you said.
um Speaking about mental space and like the mental condition that this brings out, like as I was listening to you, like I was just thinking about what the teacher must go through, because I mean a fellowship in itself is so stressful. But one getting used to teaching online, figuring out what it must be like, what are the best tools to use, and not just in terms of efficiency, but like uh, in terms of applicability, right? Like, because
Right.
it can't be something that the students can't use, and all of these things, students not turning up, students being like already attendance fluctuating more than it already does. I'm guessing all of these things come in, and now you're telling me that like you, like anyway you have to work with parents, and now you're saying that you have to work with parents on a new aspect. So like,
Yeah.
what does that do?
It drains you at times. It definitely completely drains you at times, but it's got its perks. You see a parent really struggling to make their child study, and you see this child also giving it their all. It definitely gives you a motivation to do much more than what you're doing right now, even though it's your maximum limit. Yeah, you still want to do more. As an experience, yeah, it's got its ups and downs, and generally when you're at the peak, you feel like the best thing in the world. But when you're down, I mean, it's going to be so draining. You definitely need some support at that point of time. Like I said, both in terms of mental space, physical space, everything. I think you need some huge amount of support when you're down, and thanks for friends, family, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think some of these experiences, sometimes you'll also have issues where you can't do anything, right? It's completely out of your control. You just can't do anything about that problem. So it's a lot about having those skills also to say, okay, it's not in my control. So even though I'm feeling something for it, let me try and hold that back, so I can at least go on and perform and do what I have to do for the other people in the classroom. So yeah, that part is there. That part is there, and it's a little stressful, but the rewards are definitely matching the put in, or the work that you put in. Yes.
That's I don't know, I just think that's very lovely the way that you put it. But also for everyone watching, hint hint, sponsoring a phone does not just help out the students, it helps the teachers as
Oh
well.
yes. Thank you very much. Very true. Very true. I mean, when the attendance also suddenly, like when you see more children coming up into the classroom, it's such a joy. It's such a joy. You know that you're able to reach out to more kids, and thanks to all the people who've already helped that happen, right? It's such a beautiful thing to see more children coming to the classroom and them feeling like, okay, they're being included into the educational system itself, because that's what a phone is for them right now. It's their ticket to education for them right now, because that's where their classes are. So yeah, thank you.
I like that you put it that way. It's a ticket right now to the education system. It's so true. Like, I think the whole thing around the sponsorship drive, it started just because, like, of the thought of like what this does to girls, and it's a very difficult like thing to think of because there were so many of them, like a lot of them not even thinking that they have a choice in this whole situation. Could you
Very true.
actually, like, without necessarily like maybe giving out any details, but like
Yeah.
talk about a few personal examples of how from your classroom of like how students who didn't have phones and now have got them, like how that's changed things for them?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I could start off with saying though that, like you said, for girls, it became a very huge thing because honestly, most of the families in my community, at least, it's not like they give equal amount of importance to a girl's education and a boy's education. You see definitely more importance being given to a boy's education. Like I said, when that's happening and in the time that's happening, you give a phone to someone who really wants to access something but is not able to. So there is a student, there are quite a few students who got phones like that, who got tabs through Teacher India as well, like that. Some of these students they've grown so much. Their voice itself has gone, I mean, literally and figuratively as well. I can see them talking now. I can see them speaking their mind out. I can see them feeling like they have company, because they've been able to reach out to so many articles, so many things, read so much about empowerment and read so much about the uses of education, about financial stability, about how independence is a huge thing for both men and women, and how being emotionally vulnerable is a huge aspect. And they've been reading about feminism, they've been reading about so many things now, and I can see a huge change in the way they think, the way they speak, the way they consider feelings of other friends, other students, teachers itself, the way they actually put their point out, opinion out, even in a space where they know they're not going to be listened to. Most of the times they're housed out, but they're still brave enough to put the point out. So I think it's really opened some children up, and it's really empowered some children to speak up and explore many more people who do the same and connect with many more people who do the same. So that way, I think it's been a huge addition to their growth. Yeah.
I think this pandemic has only highlighted, I mean, of course, it's made the whole, this gap of technology, access to technology, a lot more urgent to close up, but it has majorly highlighted the how drastic this gap is, right? On one end of the spectrum, there are so many kids growing up with tabs, like 3-year-olds who can like actually go onto YouTube and press that mic button and say, like, which rhyme they want to start off with, right? And on the other end, there are so many students who don't have that, and that means no digital literacy, which means how are they going to compete for jobs which can actually get them out of the situation that they are in?
Very true.
Like, could you talk a little bit about that, like around how this is not just a need, if this is your opinion, but like if this, there's not just a need of the hour, but it is a sustained issue that we need to focus on, and like that we need a gap that we need to continue trying to bridge.
Very true. Very true. I think it's definitely aligned with my opinion on the same, on the aspect as well. Especially since I'm teaching ninth and 10th graders, and I know that they're closer to leaving school and getting these real life skills. Some of them would like to just study up till 12th and then maybe access a job as well, right? Because their financial needs are higher.
Yeah.
But even for those kids who want to access a job after 12th, what about their digital literacy? Like, even if you want to become a person who's just handling a shop, or even filing bills, or even sitting at the counter of a kirana store, which is actually a pretty decent job as well, right? So sit at the counter, you're still handling computers, and you still have to type in those expenses and things like that. So I think digital literacy plays a huge role in making these children feel like they're gaining real life skills. and they're not just coming to school for the subjects or the textbook topics that they're going to learn. I think it plays a huge role, because even presently right now, you see that when children are given projects, it's again mostly pen and paper projects, right?
Yeah.
But for them to research, like make an Excel sheet, make a presentation, and come to the class and display, that itself is a huge skill for them. Now they have to learn it, like which job does not involve you creating a presentation and giving it out for children, which job does not involve you using Google Docs or Google Slides, right? Or Google Sheets. I mean, everybody uses Sheets and Excel. So all these skills, I think, are really, really important, especially for the younger generation, because now only if they get these skills are they able to access more jobs. If not, I'm not saying that they're able to access better jobs. I'm just saying the number of jobs that they can access increases just because they have the skill now. So if they're not having the skill, they're again stuck with those limited number of jobs that does not involve digital literacy, and that's a cycle that's not going to break. Even maybe their children or their future generations are still going to be stuck in that cycle. Like if we want to break that cycle, then it has to happen somewhere where digital literacy sort of imparted into one generation, and they sort of understand the importance of it, and start driving it into their family, into their culture as well. So yeah, I think that's one of the most important usages of or important aspects of equipping a child with digital literacy. I would also like to, I remember you asking, could I share a personal example, right? So I remember there was this one student in my classroom. She barely spoke, but from the online scenario, from when the online scenario started, her engagement in the classroom has really gone off the charts. And it's not just me who observes it. It's her parents, it's her friends, it's herself also. She observed it, and we all called it out because it is so beautiful. Her answers, the quality in her answers, something we've never heard her voice, honestly. It's not like we've remembered her voice, but now maybe our class is also defined around her. That's how beautifully she's been developing throughout the classroom. And there are quite a few kids like this. We were very surprised initially, because all these kids were people who they never spoke out that much in the classroom, but suddenly through this online scenario, they've really shot up, like their engagement, their growth, everything's been shooting, skyrocketing. So yeah, I think it helped quite a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about how, like, what this does for them, right? Or to their for their confidence. Like from now on, they'll know that if I could study and do well during a pandemic, then I can do well anytime. You know,
Oh yeah.
which yeah, that's okay. Looks like I've covered all of the questions from there and more, which is a good thing. Um,
Yes.
but if you have anything that you would like to say to the people watching or potential, say, people who are wondering whether they should sponsor phones or not, do you have a message?
Do I have a message? Okay. I mean, I just say, like I said, it's everyone's right to be educated, right? And right now, we're definitely not seeing every child being reached out to, or every child having the capability of being educated. They're not even able to afford it, even though government made it free. They're ideally not able to afford education because they don't have a phone, they don't have access to quality education, right? So I think it's time where, and it's the perfect time, because most of us have an understanding about how a phone is important to access education right now, and not just education but also quality education. And I think if we're able to give them a taste of what quality education looks like through this phone, I'm sure that when we come back to the physical space, they're going to thrive, and they're going to have a thirst for it. And hence, the entire city might drive for creating this space where quality education is imparted to every child. So I think it's one of the ways through which you can play a role in making the entire city's education system more quality based. So I think sponsoring a phone is definitely going to help you do that. Yeah, on a huge scale.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I said that's the last thing, but I just had another thought.
Yeah.
So this is a classroom where there is a pretty invested teacher in here, right? And there can be that argument where, okay, what about those classrooms where things are not happening, or like, and fair enough, again, fair enough question. But I just want to ask you this. Um, Also posing my own opinion here. But
Yes, yes.
just that, again, like you said, it's everyone's right? That to have an education and to have that choice of wanting to study. And it's not necessary that learning can happen only through a class. There are
Right.
multiple different ways in which one can learn. There are videos, there are resources. I mean, so many audio,
Absolutely.
like PDFs and all of this. So, like, maybe if you could share a last bit on that.
Yeah, actually, I'd love that because that is my primary focus right now as well. If I'm talking about the number of ways in which people can learn something, like you said, videos, audios, podcasts, articles, and something that we haven't very well thought about is memes, right? Even memes can serve a purpose of education, right? So each and every person learns things in their own fashion, and they spend, I think the system, the education system sort of has to help them understand, okay, what is my method of learning? When do I have the most amount of fun learning something? In which way can I access learning and have amazing amount of fun while learning it? And I think that can only happen through self-awareness. So like you said, it's a time where we still haven't pushed for it. We know this is something all of us know since quite some time, that everyone has their own method of learning. But how well have we been able to make sure that each and every child has the ability to access all these methods and then choose from one these methods as to these are the methods that I want to pursue? Like, let's say I watched, even for a particular topic, even for linear equations, quadratic equations, or you take anything. Let's say they saw a video on quadratic equations, and then they saw an app, then they played a game on quadratic equations, and then they saw a meme on quadratic equation, and then they heard a podcast, maybe they read an article, maybe they read the history of quadratic equations, and then they ended up liking it. Maybe they liked the character of the guy who invented quadratic. There is so many ways through which children can explore a topic and then choose their own way in which they want to explore that topic for the future. And I think that's the essence of learning anything. Choosing what you want to learn and how you want to learn it, I think, is the essence of learning itself. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I wanted to say. I think I got a little passionate there because that's something I'm trying with my classroom right now. I'm trying to make them understand there are different ways. I'm trying to make them access different ways of learning for each topic, and then reflect on which one they had the most fun with, and then continue learning the other topics by themselves using these methods. So that's something that I've been really trying. Yeah.
Coming from the perspective of someone who used to teach English or language, I'm just thinking about how much more that does in terms of actually helping them learn, because they want to learn something that they're genuinely interested in, for which they're going to pick up the language, right? They're going to try
Right.
to understand through these podcasts or through the reading material or through the video.
Right.
And yeah, it's just basically all around learning that is, like
Beautiful.
you said very rightly, it's the aim. So yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, on
Yeah.
that note, I guess we'll stop. I just want to really say thank you. Thank you so much, Kalyan, for not just today, but for, just the interaction that we've been having. It's been really great. Yeah, that's just it. I'm going to
I
stop.
think I
Sorry.
think I'd also like to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's sort of helped me get all these students to my classroom. Thank you, because now I think I can make sure that at least 100% of my students are accessing education and choosing how they want to learn. So thank you very much for that, Nishamita. Thank you very much for giving me a platform to even talk about it, and even thank the people who've helped me achieve it. So thank you.